All right, joining us right now to talk about this and what's about to play out. We're keeping an eye, of course, to wait for Letitia James to arrive. But joining us right now is Nick Ackerman. He's the Assistant Special Watergate Prosecutor, former Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Southern District. And also with us is Tom Dupree, the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Guys, thank you so much for being here. So, Nick, what should, in your view, people focus on when kind of watching this first step take place today?
Well, there's nothing that's really going to happen in this first step. What we really ought to be focusing on is this indictment, which is completely bogus. I've had a chance to look at the indictment here. I've had a chance to look at the underlying mortgage document. And the only crime that's been committed here is by Lindsay Halligan and Donald Trump and maybe others who essentially brought out a criminal indictment that they know is false and was done just for the purpose of using government resources and judicial resources to go after Donald Trump's political enemies. And I say this because the key element of this indictment, paragraph 6, charges that Letitia James didn't represented she'd be living in the house and that she would not rent it. Well, that is all false, because if you look at the actual underlying document, what they did is they cherry-picked out of it to take certain words. They don't put in the fact that she is allowed to rent on a temporary basis. They don't put in the fact that she doesn't have to live there. She just has to be available to live there. That is the language. They've completely taken the language to make up criminal charges here, which is a crime. And this is the same thing they did with James Comey. So you've got a pattern here of making up criminal charges to go after your political enemies. That is not something I think the court is going to put up with.
Tom, one of the steps that we're seeing that we are expecting that James's legal team to take right away is to go out, not asking for the case to be dismissed, challenging the appointment of Lindsay Halligan. Do you think it's likely that that challenge works? That is not what is supposed to happen to Tom Dupree. Well, we work on that. Tom says, no, thank you, Kate, for that question. Nick, you get that question. What do you think of this move? Do you think it is likely that this challenge, how likely is this challenge will succeed against
I think
Lindsay
it's likely
Halligan's
the challenge will succeed. It looks like it's going to succeed in the Third Circuit. And I think it's even more serious than that. I think there's a chance here that the judges might decide to appoint special counsel to determine whether there has actually been a crime on the court here. That they have the right under Supreme Court decisions to appoint a special counsel to do an investigation and to actually prosecute somebody who commits a crime on the court.
Take this other element. Caitlin Polance was talking about it as well, that James is going to be asking the court to prohibit anyone involved, especially the prosecutors, from talking to the press, especially after the text messages that were revealed of Lindsay Halligan. Is this a thing? Wouldn't they be told not to talk anyway?
Of course they shouldn't do that. I mean, that's just basic.
So what's the point of, is it just to reinforce it?
Well, especially when you have somebody like Lindsay Halligan, who's never tried a criminal case, knows nothing about criminal law, knows nothing about prosecution. I mean, that's somebody you've got to put a tight rein on, because she has absolutely no idea what she's doing. If you look at those text messages, they're the most bizarre set of messages I've ever read in my life.
You would not have done that if you were.
Not even close. Not even close. And it didn't say anything other than the fact you have to ask yourself, why did Lindsay Halligan even send a text message to this reporter in the first instance? None of that makes any sense.
Tom Dupree has decided to join us once again. It's good to have you back, Tom. Sorry for the technical glitch. I'm very curious, as I was just going back and forth with Nick on kind of the elements of what could happen today, what is your focus? What's your big question? What do you think this eventually turns on?
Sure. I think the most important thing today is to see the judge's reaction to these arguments. Judges often, even when they're not ruling, they will give a signal as to whether or not in their mind certain arguments have legs. One of the issues that's going to be teed up today, as we were discussing, is whether Halligan's appointment was impermissible and unlawful. the judge might give a sense of how, they view the issue. The other thing that could happen is the judge could say, I'm going to send this decision to that court in South Carolina that's already been designated to hear Jim Comey's challenge to Halligan's appointment. Well, that's one thing to look at. The other is to see whether or not the judge is offended by the comments that the administration or that Halligan herself has been making in the press. If the prosecutors get off on the wrong foot with this judge, that could be a very telling signal as to how this entire case could unfold.
Tom, how big of a factor is Donald Trump in this case? Not today. I'm just saying going forward, how big of a factor does he become?
He is a huge factor. He is a looming dominant factor in this entire prosecution. Look, judges and jurors read the newspapers, they follow TV, they follow the media, they know what's going on. They are going to be aware at a general level of the background of this case, how this prosecution was essentially directed by Donald Trump. Trump is not going to be in the courtroom. He's not going to be a witness in this case, but his presence looms over this entire proceeding. So I do think the judge, the jurors, all of it will be well aware of the role that Donald Trump has played to get this court case in this court.
Yep. First things first, let's get into court. That's where Letitia James will be arriving very soon. We will watch and find out what happens in there. Nick, thank you for being here. It's great to see you. Tom, thanks for joining us, albeit delayed. Just kidding. Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it.